Nina Clark, a 32-year-old woman, with a body that turned heads and a smile that could melt steel. She knew what she wanted in life: money, comfort, and control, and she never worked hard for any of it. She believed the easiest way to wealth was through men, rich men. She had a long list of exes who had lost money, pride, and sometimes even homes, all in her quest for luxury. But none of them were like Daniel Kruger. Daniel was 48, soft-spoken, and lonely. He ran a successful chain of auto repair shops across the state. He wasn't flashy, didn't dress to impress, and lived quietly in a big house outside the city. His wealth wasn't obvious, but Nina had a sixth sense for money. One night at a charity banquet, she spotted him alone at the bar. It took her only 10 minutes to make him smile and offer her a ride home. From there, things moved fast. Nina played her role well. She pretended to be sweet, patient, and loyal. She cooked for him, laughed at his jokes, and acted like she was falling in love. Daniel, who hadn't dated seriously in years, began to believe he had found something real. He took her on weekend trips. He gave her access to his second car. He even added her name to his house alarm system. But Nina wasn't interested in marriage. She had one goal: his money. She began asking small things at first: help with her credit card, a new handbag, some emergency rent for her cousin. Daniel didn't hesitate. His generosity only grew. What he didn't know was that Nina was already digging deeper, checking his bank statements when he left his laptop open, snooping around his home office when he was in the shower. That's when she discovered it: a safe hidden inside a cabinet behind an old bookshelf. Daniel had written the combination on a torn piece of paper, tucked inside a business folder. She memorized it the same night. And inside the safe, stacks of cash. She couldn't believe it. It looked like over $300,000, maybe more. That night, as she lay beside him in bed, she smiled in the dark. Not because of love, but because of opportunity. She started planning. She told her best friend, Trish, about the money. Trish had always warned her about playing too deep, but this time Nina didn't care. She believed Daniel was weak, trusting, and too in love to ever suspect anything. She'd wait for the right moment, when he left town for a weekend, or when he went on a fishing trip. Then she'd clear the safe and disappear. Nina didn't know that Daniel had noticed things. Small things. The missing papers. Her constant curiosity. The way she once asked him too many questions about the house. And most of all, he had noticed her lies. Daniel wasn't as clueless as he seemed. It was a Thursday afternoon when Daniel pretended to leave town for business. He told Nina he had to attend a 2-day workshop in Charlotte. Something about expansion plans for his business. He kissed her forehead, grabbed his suitcase, and walked out the door. Nina waved sweetly, pretending to care, but her heart was racing. This was it. She waited 2 hours after he left, just in case. Then she peeked out the window, making sure the coast was clear. Daniel's car was gone. No neighbors were outside. She changed into black leggings, tied her hair back, and put on gloves. She moved fast, heading straight to the office. The safe was still there, hidden behind the bookshelf. She smiled. The combination came back to her. Easily, 18-24-36. She turned the dial slowly, careful not to mess it up. With a soft click, the door swung open. There it was. Neatly stacked bundles of money wrapped in rubber bands. $100 bills, $50 bills, envelopes with cash. She estimated it had to be nearly $400,000. Nina grabbed a black gym bag she had left by the door and started stuffing the money inside. She didn't count it. There was no time. Her plan was to take it all and run. She had already booked a one-way flight to Miami under a different name. A rental car was waiting at the airport. Trish was supposed to meet her there with a new phone and fake ID. Everything was set. But as she turned to zip the bag closed, she heard a noise. A slow, quiet click, like a door opening. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned around quickly, and standing there in the doorway was Daniel. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. His expression was cold, calm. In his right hand was a pistol. Not raised, not shaking, just waiting. Nina's voice trembled. You said you were leaving town." Daniel stepped forward, slowly. "I lied." She dropped the bag. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like." "Save it," he said. "I gave you everything. I trusted you. I wanted to believe you were different." "Please," she whispered. "We can fix this. I'll put it all back." Daniel didn't answer. His hand tightened around the grip. She tried again. "I love you. That made him pause. For a second, his face softened, but only for a second. Then he said quietly, "No, you don't." The next moment happened fast. Nina lunged at the bag, grabbing a bundle of cash and throwing it toward his face. It wasn't enough. Daniel raised the gun. Bang! The sound echoed through the house. She fell. Blood spread quickly across her shirt. Daniel stood still, breathing heavily. The gun dropped to his side. He hadn't wanted this, but she left him no choice. The shot had been loud, louder than Daniel expected. It echoed through the quiet neighborhood, where houses sat spaced out but not too far apart. Windows were shut, air conditioners humming, birds scattering from trees. Still, Mrs. Gertrude Lewis, the elderly woman who lived next door, heard it. She was sitting by her window drinking peppermint tea when the bang rang out. Her hand trembled, and some of the tea spilled onto her blanket. At first, she thought it might have been a car backfiring, but something didn't feel right. She stared at Daniel's house for a long moment. The front door was closed. No movement, no voices, just silence. 10 minutes later, she dialed 911. "Hello?" "Yes," she said in a shaky voice. "I think I just heard a gunshot. It came from my neighbor's house, the one with the red shutters. Please send someone." At the same time, inside the house, Daniel was pacing back and forth. Nina was lying on the floor, her blood slowly soaking into the expensive rug. Her eyes were half open, lips parted like she wanted to speak. But she couldn't. She wasn't dead yet. That was the part that made Daniel feel sick. He knelt beside her and whispered, "Why, Nina? Why didn't you just ask for help?" Her fingers twitched. Daniel stood up and grabbed his phone. For a few seconds, he stared at it. Should he call the police? Should he pretend it was a break-in? Should he run? No. Running would make him a criminal. He took a deep breath and did the only thing he could live with. He called 911. "Yes, I just shot someone," he said calmly. "She broke into my safe. She tried to steal everything. Please send help." The dispatcher asked him to stay on the line. He sat down in the hallway, the gun placed beside him, far from his hands. He told the truth. Everything that happened. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat there, breathing slowly, like a man who had lost something important but didn't know how to feel about it. Within minutes, flashing lights filled the street. Police cars. An ambulance. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Some came outside. Mrs. Lewis stood in her front yard in her nightgown, holding her teacup tightly as officers arrived. She pointed to Daniel's house. "They've always been quiet," she told one of the officers. "That girl, I never trusted her." Inside, paramedics found Nina still alive, but barely. She had lost too much blood. As they worked on her, Daniel was placed in handcuffs, not because they knew he was guilty, but because that's the procedure when a gun is involved. Detective Linda Moore, a tall, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, arrived shortly after. She entered the home, took one look at the open safe, the scattered cash, and the bag, then turned to Daniel. "You mind telling me exactly what happened?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "I'll tell you everything." But even as he spoke, something deep inside him knew. This wasn't going to be simple. The ambulance raced toward the hospital, its sirens screaming into the night. Inside, Nina lay pale and motionless, her chest rising only slightly. The paramedics worked fast, pressing gauze to her wound, checking her pulse, keeping her awake. "She's fading," one of them shouted. "Stay with us, ma'am. What's your name?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. They pumped oxygen through her nose, inserted in four, and gave her fluids. One of the paramedics, a young man named Jesse, leaned close and asked softly, "Do you know who shot you?" Nina's eyes flickered open. A tear rolled down her cheek. She whispered just one word, "Love." Jesse didn't understand. Was it a name? A plea? A confession? But she said nothing else. By the time they reached the emergency room, she was barely breathing. Doctors took over. Nurses rolled her into surgery. Blood was everywhere, soaked into the stretcher, smeared on her hands, even under her fingernails. For nearly an hour, they fought to save her. Meanwhile, back at the house, Detective Linda Moore sat across from Daniel in the living room. She didn't rush him. She let him talk. Daniel told her about the safe, about how he pretended to leave town, about catching Nina red-handed. "And you shot her?" she asked calmly. "Yes," Daniel said. "She went for the bag. I panicked. I thought she'd attack me." Moore narrowed her eyes. "Was she armed?" "No." "So, you weren't in danger?" "I I didn't know what she'd do. She lied to me. She betrayed me. Moore looked around the room again. The cash, the open safe, the blood-stained rug. I believe you, she said finally. But the law doesn't care how hurt you feel. The law cares if your life was at risk. Right now, this is looking like manslaughter. Daniel put his head in his hands. Outside, reporters were already arriving. Word spread fast in the quiet town. A rich man shoots his younger girlfriend during a robbery? That was news. By morning, photos of Nina from her Instagram were being shared online. Her posing with designer bags, sipping wine on beaches, wearing tight dresses and high heels. Headlines called her a gold digger. Others called Daniel a cold-blooded killer. The truth was more complicated. At the hospital, the doctors finally stepped away from Nina. She didn't make it. Time of death, 3:08 a.m. The nurse in charge of her care wrote one final note in her chart. Patient whispered, "Love," before losing consciousness. Unclear meaning. That same morning, Detective Moore received the call. "She's gone," the voice on the phone said. Nina Clark died in surgery. Moore looked out the window, then down at Daniel, who sat quietly at her desk, now in police custody. She sighed. "Murder charges," she said softly. "Now we're playing a whole different game." The trial began 3 months later. By then, the media had picked sides. Half the country saw Daniel as a victim, a hard-working man tricked and betrayed by a selfish gold digger. The other half saw him as a dangerous, jealous boyfriend who had no right to kill someone, no matter the reason. But in court, only the facts mattered. The courtroom was packed on the first day. Reporters filled the back row. Nina's best friend, Trish, sat on the left with folded arms and a blank stare. On the right sat Daniel's sister, eyes full of worry. Everyone wanted to hear the same thing. What really happened that night? The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Jessica Ramos, wasted no time. She painted Daniel as cold, calculated, and jealous. She reminded the jury that Nina was unarmed, and that Daniel shot her after she had dropped the money bag. Was she guilty of theft? Yes, Ramos said, but she didn't deserve death. Then she played the 911 recording. Daniel's calm voice filled the room. "I just shot someone. She tried to rob me." The room was silent when it ended. Next, Ramos brought in the medical examiner, who explained how Nina had died. One bullet, straight through the chest. No defensive wounds. No sign she fought back. Would she have survived if help had arrived sooner? The defense asked. The doctor shook his head. Unlikely. The wound was too deep. Then came Trish. She looked straight at the jury. "She told me about the safe," Trish said. "She was going to steal it, yes. But she also told me she loved him. I begged her not to do it. She thought he'd forgive her." "Why did she say love with her last breath?" Ramos asked. Trish blinked away tears. "Maybe she meant him. Maybe she regretted it. I don't know." Then it was the defense's turn. Daniel's lawyer, Samuel Reed, was calm and steady. He didn't deny Nina's actions. Instead, he focused on intent. "Daniel caught a thief in his home," he said. "He didn't shoot her in the back. He didn't chase her down. He confronted her, and when she moved for the bag, he reacted. Was it panic? Fear? Yes, but not murder." Then Daniel took the stand. His voice shook as he spoke. "I loved her. I thought we had something real. But she played me. When I saw her in front of that safe, I felt like everything in my life was a lie. I didn't plan to shoot her. I was scared. She moved fast. I didn't know if she had something in her bag. I just reacted." There was a long silence. Then the judge gave the jury their instructions. They had two choices. Guilty of second-degree murder, meaning he killed without planning but still with intent, or not guilty, based on self-defense or provocation. It took 2 days. When the jury returned, the room held its breath. The foreman stood up and read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of manslaughter." Daniel bowed his head. He would face a maximum of 15 years. But for Nina, it was already over. The sentencing hearing was held 2 weeks after the verdict. It was a cloudy morning, and the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters once again. Some held microphones. Others snapped photos as Daniel was led into the building in a navy blue suit. Thinner than he had been months ago. His face was tired, his eyes hollow. Inside the courtroom, the mood was tense. The judge, Honorable Raymond Lutz, was known for being fair but firm. He had read every report, listened to every recording, and reviewed Daniel's background. No criminal record. No history of violence. A man who had built a life from nothing and thrown it away in one moment of fear. Before the sentence was given, both sides were allowed to speak. Nina's younger brother, Marcus Clark, stood up first. He was only 21, trembling as he spoke. "My sister made mistakes," he said, staring directly at Daniel. "But she didn't deserve to die like that. She could have changed. She was more than what people say online. She was funny. She was smart. She made bad choices, but she was still my family." Then came Trish. "She told me she was scared of being poor again," Trish said softly. "She wanted to escape her past, but she did it the wrong way. I warned her, and she didn't listen. But still, she didn't have a weapon. She wasn't threatening anyone. Daniel didn't have to shoot her." Daniel sat quietly through it all. When it was his turn to speak, he stood, hands shaking, voice low. "I live every day with regret," he began. "I thought I was protecting myself, my home, my trust. But I took a life. A woman I loved, even if it was all a lie. I wish I had handled it differently. I will never forgive myself, no matter what the court decides." The room was silent as the judge finally spoke. "Mr. Kruger," Judge Lutz said, "you were the victim of manipulation, yes. But you had a choice. You were not under attack. You were not being harmed. You made a decision that ended a life. And that comes with consequences." He paused. "I sentence you to 9 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 5. Gasps filled the room, some in relief, others in anger. Daniel didn't flinch. The bailiff escorted him out. No one from his side of the courtroom cried. They just watched him leave, quiet and still. That night, the story hit the news again. "Wealthy mechanic sentenced in girlfriend's death," the headlines read. Some called it justice. Others called it mercy. Trish returned to her small apartment and packed away. The last photo she had of Nina. She couldn't keep looking at her. Friend's smiling face. Marcus went back to college, trying to start fresh, carrying the pain with him. And Daniel? He arrived at the state correctional facility the next morning. No protests. No headlines. Just another number behind a chain-link fence. He would have time to think. Too much time. 5 years passed. Daniel Kruger sat quietly in the prison yard, watching the sun rise through barbed wire. His hair was now streaked with gray, his face marked with the weight of time. He didn't speak much. He stayed out of trouble. The other inmates mostly left him alone. To them, he was just another man who let love blind him and paid the price. In prison, time moved differently. Daniel spent most of his days in the library, reading books on psychology, guilt, and forgiveness. He wrote long letters to no one. He never tried to defend what he'd done. He never claimed he was the victim. Deep inside, he knew he had acted too fast, too emotionally, and it had cost a life. Each year on the anniversary of Nina's death, he lit a small paper candle in the prison chapel and sat in silence. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't believe he deserved it. Meanwhile, the world outside moved on. Trish moved to Atlanta, got married, and opened a small salon. She never spoke of Nina, but sometimes, when her husband asked about her past, her eyes would grow distant. Marcus Clark graduated from college and became a teacher. Every year on his sister's birthday, he posted a photo of her on social media with the words, "I hope you found peace." He never visited Daniel in prison, never wrote him. But he also never spoke out against his release when the time came. And that time did come. On a cloudy Tuesday morning, Daniel stood before the parole board. He didn't beg. He didn't make excuses. He simply said, "I made a choice I can never take back. I've lived with that every day. If I leave this place, I won't forget. I won't pretend it didn't happen. I will carry it forever." The board voted. Parole granted. Daniel walked out of prison at age 54 with nothing but a small duffel bag and the clothes on his back. There was no one waiting at the gates. No camera crews. No welcome home signs. He took a bus to a quiet town upstate and rented a small room behind an old diner. He took a job cleaning floors at a local hardware store. He didn't tell anyone his past. At night, he wrote in a journal. About Nina. About regret. About how easy it is to confuse love with need. And how hard it is to forgive yourself. Nina's grave was in a small cemetery just outside the city. A simple headstone. Few visited it anymore. But once a year, a quiet man with tired eyes left a single white rose on the grave. No note. No name. Just a gesture. A whisper of what remained.